There's a building on the edge of town. You have probably seen it, abandoned now. Windows broken, vines climbing the walls. It is enormous, larger than a school, larger than a hospital, larger even than many prisons. It was called an asylum. The term has fallen out of use. We call them psychiatric hospitals now, mental health facilities, treatment centers. But in the 19th century, they were asylums, and they were built everywhere. Across America, across Europe, across parts of Asia and South America, hundreds of them. Massive stone structures, Gothic spires, long wings stretching across hillsides, buildings that could house 1,000 people, 2,000, sometimes more. They rose suddenly. In the span of a few decades, they appeared in nearly every state, every province, every county. And then, just as suddenly, they emptied. Most are gone now, demolished, repurposed, left to decay. But the question remains, who were these buildings really designed for? The standard history is clear. In the early 19th century, attitudes toward mental illness began to shift. Before this, people suffering from mental disturbances were often kept at home, hidden away, or left to wander. But industrialization changed society. Cities grew, families fractured. The old support systems, extended family, village community, church oversight, began to collapse. At the same time, new ideas emerged. The moral treatment movement, originating in France and England, proposed that mental illness could be treated through structured environments, clean air, routine, productive labor, separation from the chaos of urban life. Asylums were meant to be therapeutic spaces. They were built in rural settings, away from the noise of cities, surrounded by farmland. Patients would work the fields, tend gardens, learn trades. The architecture reflected this vision. Grand facades, spacious grounds, natural light flooding through tall windows. This is the story we are given, and for many years it was accepted without question. But there is something unusual about the timing. Asylums did not emerge gradually, they appeared in clusters. In the United States, the majority were built between 1850 and 1890. In Britain, the Asylum Act of 1845 mandated construction across the country. In France, Germany, and Italy, similar waves of construction occurred within the same narrow window. By 1880, nearly every region of the industrialized world had at least one large asylum. The scale was staggering. The Willard Asylum in New York, completed in 1869, was designed to hold 1,500 patients. The Kirkbride Plan, a popular architectural model, recommended buildings with wings extending hundreds of feet in each direction. But here's the question. Why did so many governments in so many countries suddenly decide they needed institutions of this size? Was mental illness increasing that rapidly? Or was something else happening? Walk through the ruins of an old asylum, and you notice things. The hallways are long, impossibly long. Some stretch for a quarter mile without interruption. The ceilings are high, 15 feet, 20 feet, far higher than necessary for a hospital. The walls are thick, not just thick, fortified. In some buildings, the outer walls are 3 feet deep, stone and brick, built to last centuries. The windows are barred, not just in certain wings, everywhere. There are isolation rooms, small chambers with reinforced doors, no windows, no furniture, designed to contain a single person. There are separation wards, entire wings accessible only through locked gates. This is not the architecture of healing. This is the architecture of containment. Who was sent to these places? The official records list diagnoses: melancholia, mania, hysteria, moral insanity. But read deeper, and the definitions blur. A woman who refused to marry could be diagnosed with hysteria. A man who abandoned his farm could be labeled melancholic. A child who could not remember their parents could be deemed mentally deficient. Trauma victims were institutionalized. Burn veterans, survivors of fires and floods, people who had lost everything and could not explain what had happened to them. Orphans were institutionalized. Widows, the homeless, the displaced, immigrants who spoke strange languages, indigenous people removed from their lands, former slaves struggling to adapt to a world that did not want them. The asylums filled quickly, not with violently insane, not with the dangerous, but with people who did not fit, people who could not adjust, people whose stories did not align with the accepted narrative, people who remembered things differently. There is a theory circulating online. It is not accepted by historians. It is not taught in universities, but it persists. The theory is called the Mudflood. It proposes that sometime in the 19th century, a catastrophic event occurred, not a single flood, but a series of events, earthquakes, floods, atmospheric disturbances that buried cities, displaced populations, and erased parts of history. Proponents point to photographs from the 1800s showing buildings half buried in mud, streets excavated down to lower floors, basements that appeared to have once been ground levels. They point to gaps in genealogical records, missing census data, entire towns that appear suddenly in documents without prior mention. And they ask about the asylums. If a population had been displaced, if people had survived something traumatic, something that shattered their sense of reality, where would they be sent? What would be done with survivors who could not explain what they had experienced? This is the question the Mudflood theory asks. It is not proven, it is speculation, but it is emotionally compelling. Because the asylums were filled with displaced people, they were filled with amnesiacs, they were filled with individuals whose records are incomplete, whose backgrounds are vague, whose admissions are justified with diagnoses that amount to "does not fit." And that raises a quieter, more disturbing question. Were the asylums built to treat mental illness, or were they built to contain people who remembered too much? Asylum records are inconsistent. Many have been lost. Some were destroyed in fires. Others were deliberately discarded when institutions closed. But even surviving records are strange. Patient names were often changed. A woman admitted as Mary O'Connor might appear in later documents as Patient 47, or MO, or simply unknown. Admission logs sometimes list the reason for institutionalization as unknown cause or refer to superintendent. Discharge records are rare. Many patients have admission dates but no release dates. They simply disappear from the ledgers. In some asylums, entire wings are unaccounted for. The buildings have space for 2,000 patients, but records show only 800 names. Where are the others? Were they never documented? Or were the records removed? Consider the arithmetic. In 1870, the population of New York State was approximately 4.4 million people. The Willard Asylum alone could hold 1,500 patients. There were more than a dozen other large asylums in the state. At peak capacity, New York's asylums could house 20,000 people. That's one asylum bed for every 220 residents. Compare this to today. Modern psychiatric hospitals in New York serve a population of nearly 20 million. The total number of inpatient beds is 20,000, one bed for every 1,000 residents. So the 19th century had 5 times the per capita capacity. Was mental illness 5 times more common? Or were the asylums built for a different purpose? Mental health care today is decentralized.
outpatient clinics, community programs, medication management, short-term crisis stabilization. The massive institutions are gone. Deinstitutionalization began in the 1960s. By the 1990s, most of the old asylums had closed. This shift is considered progress. Patients are no longer warehoused, they are integrated into society. But it also raises a question. If modern medicine can treat mental illness without locking people away for years, why was the old model so different? Why did the 19th century require fortresses? Why did it require isolation wings, barred windows, walls 3 feet thick? The official answer is that medical understanding was primitive, treatments were crude, patients were kept for their own safety. But look at the buildings themselves. They were not designed for safety. They were designed for permanence.
Institutions serve two functions: care and control. Sometimes these overlap, sometimes they do not. Asylums provided care, meals, shelter, medical attention. For some patients, institutionalization was genuinely therapeutic. But asylums also provided control. They removed people from public view. They silenced dissenting voices. They isolated individuals who did not conform. In the Soviet Union, psychiatric hospitals were used to imprison political dissidents. In Nazi Germany, mental patients were among the first targeted for elimination. In America, asylums held suffragettes, labor organizers, indigenous children removed from their families. This is not conspiracy. This is documented history. The question is not whether institutions were used for control. The question is how often and for whom. Stand inside an abandoned asylum and you feel it. The scale, the emptiness, the sense that these buildings were prepared for something larger than illness. The wards are too vast, the hallways too long, the isolation rooms too numerous. You walk through the ruins and you imagine the people who lived here, not for weeks, not for months, for decades. Some patients spent their entire adult lives inside these walls, admitted at 20, released at 70, or never released at all. And you ask yourself, what did they know? What did they remember? What stories did they tell before the records were lost? There is a building on the edge of town. It stands empty now. The windows are dark, the doors are chained. But once it was full of people who could not explain where they came from, people who had lost their families, people whose memories did not match the world around them. We are told they were mentally ill. We are told the asylums were built to help them, and perhaps that is true. But when you stand before these massive, silent structures, another question rises. What if they were built to contain something else? Not illness, but inconvenience. Not madness, but memory. The buildings remain. The records are incomplete. The answers are uncertain. And we are left to wonder what really happened in the decades after the mud settled. What stories were lost, and who decided they should be forgotten.